Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Only Podcast. My name is Chris Vanini, and I'm joined by Austin Smith today. We got a two-man thing going, and MSU Athletics is just crumbling right now, isn't it?
Just a great, really optimistic way to lead off our podcast here.
It has not been. It has things. Yeah, things have continued to go from bad to worse for MSU. Before we get into that, I just want to mention I was on the USA Today college football podcast today, Wednesday. If anybody wants to go listen to that, I'm just a plug for that. Called the Football Forum. Mostly talked about coaching stuff, but I kind of gave my thoughts on MSU at the end of that. But we're going to start off with this podcast with basketball because right before we got ready to record this, MSU announced that Gavin Schilling has suffered a knee injury and will be out an undetermined amount of time. That follows basically the same thing happening to Ben Carter a few weeks back, leaving MSU with just 3 real scholarship forwards on the roster, none of whom are taller than 6'8", and a very thin position has just gotten incredibly thinner. Austin, your initial thoughts on what that means?
My initial thoughts on the year 2016 are that somebody sold their soul for 2015 and as payment offered up the year 2016 to whatever god they were sacrificing their soul to, because it's just been an absolute disaster. I mean, you start off with, I'm lumping in the college football playoff from last year. Nightmare, just about as bad as it could have gone.
Well, I mean,
come on.
I guess that's the dividing point right there. I guess right there, New Year's Eve.
I lump it in
15. Well, that right there's the dividing point because you had tweeted someone sold their soul for 2015, and this is the result of 2016. Because 2015 included
was amazing,
the Final Four run out of nowhere, no one expected, and a football Big Ten championship and playoff berth with some crazy fluke luck to get there.
3 soul sellable endings in Ohio State, Michigan, and Iowa, and then. Yeah, but then this year it's just been between injuries.
Then the Alabama game happens. Right. That's your cutoff point. Alabama happens. Things go terribly for MSU.
Right.
Then the basketball team loses to Middle Tennessee State, ending their hopes of a national championship. And now football is a complete mess and is probably going to miss a bowl game. Yes. And now the basketball team is incredibly thin, losing 2 key players.
Right. And so to cycle back through all of that, now another decision that's looking like an absolute nightmare, at least for Michigan State, is Deontay Davis's decision to go pro. Because, I mean, and not only would he have been obviously the starting center here, and losing Schilling would have hurt the depth even with him. But now without him, without transfer Ben Carter, Michigan State's only other guy over 6'9", I think. Outside of
at 6'9", yeah, they're both
6'9". Yeah, don't even have a guy hitting 6'10" on the roster, even entirely healthy. Now gone. It's It's probably the injury Michigan State could afford the least.
Yep, I agree.
There's no real way around it. I think anybody. I mean, they are loaded at pretty much the 1 through the 3, but they have nobody. I don't know how this team is gonna. They're screwed when it comes to teams with big players. They don't have a lot of choices now, but to do what Izzo says he wants to do every year, and they did some. I feel like they did a decent job of it last year. I could be misremembering, and they just have to run. I mean, they don't have a choice. You can't bog down in the half court with this team. You're not going to be able to do it. It's just not even an option. The silver lining to that philosophy is that you are so loaded 1 through 3 that you should be okay. And honestly, Miles Bridges should be able. I think he was going to play a lot of 4 as it was before this news, but now he's going to play I would wager almost exclusively 4 until Schilling gets back. It's dire circumstances, especially with the way the schedule starts with, Arizona, Duke. I think they might even end up playing Baylor in one of the tournaments. I mean, it is just a brutal start to the season and you might see some really lopsided scores against teams that have a lot of size. So that's a tough injury. You just got to hope that he can come back. I mean, halfway through the season, MSU likes to sandbag the first half, it feels like, anyway, and just surprise people right at the end. But they needed bigs and they needed Schilling, and to not have him is that's a gut punch right there.
And the fact they don't have a timetable for either is means
right.
It's going to be a long time.
Yeah, you could be talking and New Year's. I mean, if it's a injury, I guess it's better if you're trying to get real spin zone here and look silver lining. It's better that it's happening now than it's happening halfway through the season, because you just let him. You leave him and Carter. You take your lumps for as long as you have to take them. Let those two get healthy and don't rush them back, because if they can be back by New Year's, then you have pretty much the entire Big Ten season to hopefully right the ship and try to make a run at something, Sweet 16 again.
Yeah, I assume this means no red shirt for Kyle Ahrens. I don't know how to say Kyle Ahrens.
Kyle Ahrens, no.
Yeah, he's got to play. I mean, he's 6'5". I mean, I know they had thought about it. I mean, who they have at forward now is Kenny Goins, a former walk-on who was okay last year. Mm-hmm. Miles Bridges, a true freshman. Nick Ward, a true freshman. And Matt Van Dyke, who's a walk-on who just got an extra scholarship for this year. But he's essentially a walk-on. So there's not much there. Kyle Ahrens is a 6'5" guard. Josh Langford is a 6'5" guard. And after that, you've got Alvin Ellis and Matt McQuaid and small guys. So there's no size left on the team at all.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to have. I mean, do you think Kenny Goins probably plays center?
I think Goins, and moving forward, you don't have a choice. I mean, you have to play Goins, and Ward will play, I would think, exclusively center. I doubt they'll play together a whole lot, because you probably can't afford to have you can't really afford to have them get in foul trouble. I think you'll see that the immediate results of it are you'll see a ton of those two at the 5. You'll see Miles Bridges a lot at the 4, and then you'll see those other mid-sized 3s. I mean, I can't even think of who it would be. I think you'll see a ton of Langford at the 3, but they're going to have to they're going to have to patch together some other power forward. They're going to basically play 4 out, 1 in, which I think they would have done kind of anyway. But
right, I mean, they already didn't have a back to the basket guy, because Schilling never developed into that.
Right. Well, they were hoping Ward would be that, I think, and Spells.
Yeah, I can't say what I expect out of the freshman. I haven't.
No, you have no idea. That was the hope. I got to think that was like you're hoping he would be what, I hate to even say this name because, man, could we use him now, but Caleb Swanigan could have been for Michigan State last year. It's just like you're off the bench, third big, back to the basket, throw it in and help him, have him score. But now he's got to do everything. I mean, you don't have a lot of shot blocking either. Ward, by all accounts, is not, a huge athlete. Miles Bridges, I suppose, is probably a pretty talented weak side shot blocker. But, it's going to be tough. They're going to have to run. I mean, their only hope is to get on break and just try to gas teams. But, I mean, the thought of having to defend Duke with a healthy team was terrifying, and now the thought of it it's like, what? I'm almost at a loss for words. I haven't even had time to fully digest how big of an injury this is. But like I said, I'm just hoping they're back, but for the Big Ten season. It's
going to be real interesting to see what Izzo does in terms of an offense, in terms of just the lineups that he's going to have to think of and the style.
He's going to get creative. He's going to have to get creative. A lot of 2-point. I wouldn't be surprised to see. You could be talking about a Tum McQuaid, Langford at the 3, Bridges at the 4, Ward or Goins at the 5. I mean, that's probably going to be one of the lineups that you're going to see. But there's always basketball season, and then something like this happens.
You mentioned Deontay Davis, and obviously we already knew coming back it would have been huge in all ways for MSU. And
Yeah.
I know when he fell in the draft, it seemed like it may have been a mistake, but he did get a guaranteed contract as a second rounder. So it did work out for him.
Oh, absolutely.
Not a lot of people maybe expected that type of deal in the second round, but he did get the contract, so it did work out for Davis.
Yeah, no, I don't blame him for. I mean, he was projected to be a lottery pick at the time. You can't blame a kid for wanting to go make some money and support, his family. I don't blame him for his decision. It just looks it's unfortunate strictly from a fan's point of view. It's like, man, he would really be a great 5, especially with all the things he did defensively, to add to this team. And that, again, is pre-injuries. And now it looks even more like, oh, man, it's more of an I wish we had him. I don't fault him for his decision for a second. I mean, you really can't, even with the slide. Like you said, though, he landed in a nice spot, gets to be with Zebo in Memphis. So, but yeah, tough blow.
And one thing I say, I know a lot of people for a few years pointed to this season as the possible national championship caliber because of the freshmen that were coming in, but you can't predict those things years out because no one expected last year. Last year's team was the best opportunity he's had in a decade, or maybe 2011. But
yeah, it'll be if they can close out the recruiting class for next year. Well, that's going to be, and you can bring Bridges and Langford back, and you can,
Yeah, but I mean, we never know. I mean, Davis leaving after 1 year, Izzo seemed to never really think that was going to be a possibility. So you never know. And that's why even last year people were like, just wait till how good this team is next year. And I was just like, just appreciate how good this year's team was, because last year's team was very, very good. They just got upset by a team that played out of their mind. And so, yeah. So now we move on to
let's tear things up. Let's talk about the football.
Turn into the football. A 54-40 loss to Northwestern. The most points MSU has ever given up at home, ever. To Northwestern, who was 112th in the country in scoring entering
the worst scoring offense of the Big Ten coming into the game.
All of the things that I warned you about the defensive backs, about the defense,
they
all came to play. This wasn't even Northwestern passing deep a million times and scoring all these points. They just destroyed the MSU safeties. Bubble screen, staying 10 yards off every single time, taking a poor angle to the ball, slow reacting to the ball. They just got eaten alive.
Yeah.
And then MSU ekes back in, and then they give up the kickoff. And they couldn't stop Justin Jackson at all. All those runs that had been getting to the linebackers throughout the year, the linebackers weren't able to make the tackles. Vayante Copeland got turned inside out twice. Andrew Dowell got turned inside out once. Man, Justin Jackson's a good back, but he made a lot of MSU players look bad. And I mean, where do we start with this? I guess before we get into the quarterbacks and the offense, let's start with the defense, because that was the problem in this game.
The problem with this team, I wrote something on it earlier this week. Just a couple days back, but the problem on both sides of the ball, as much as people want to talk about, we won't get into, like you said, we'll get to the quarterback in a minute, but as much as people want to talk about that, the Lions are terrible. I mean, they've been 2-4 worthy. And honestly, it kind of blows my mind that they were able to do what they were able to do against Notre Dame and win that game.
Notre Dame figured it out at the end and almost made the comeback.
Exactly. And then everybody's followed that since. But it's funny because the plays that beat the team last week are plays that typically have always given the Narduzzi style defense, if you will, trouble. The bubble screens have always given them trouble, but generally they've had the safeties to come up and make plays, or you've had the linebackers that have been able to get out there and for whatever. Or the quarterbacks actually felt like he might get hit more than once or twice a game. And the safeties just got so exposed. You're right. I mean, Demetrius Cox just got eaten alive. Monte Nicholson did his standard awful angles. I mean, it was bad.
I could not believe they kept Cox on Austin Carr.
Yeah,
he could not.
Over.
And there was a third down. I think it might have been their last touchdown. It was a third down. Where is it here? It was a what am I looking at here? It was a 54. Yeah, it was a fourth. Oh, it was 4th and 6. It was a 4th and 6 from the 29-yard line, and 2 wide receivers to the right side, and MSU played its standard coverage, meaning I think it was Copeland was on the covering the backside where there was no wide receiver there, which means you knew it was Cox on Carr one-on-one, and he just couldn't cover him again, time after time. Austin Carr's a good player too, but man, I mean, this is what I was talking about when we a couple weeks ago when we talked about, to be a leader, to show leadership, and it's hard to be a leader when you can't, when you're struggling on the field, and Cox was, and the defense has to change. You cannot play the same style of defense that you've been playing. You don't have the players anymore. There's no Darqueze Dennard. There's no Trey Waynes. There's no Isaiah Lewis. There's no Curtis Drummond.
Yeah.
There's no R.J. Williamson. I mean, and they were rotating corners in and out. At one point, they were playing true freshmen and redshirt freshmen at corner with Justin Lane and I forgot who was on the other side. And Lane did have the pick six, but he also blew the one coverage on the really long, on a long play after that. I don't think they know what to do with the defensive backs, but but they're also not getting a rush. The linebackers aren't what they were, and all over the place. It's not good, but you have to change his defense, and it hasn't changed.
Something's got to change. I mean, if you talk personnel-wise, I mean, at Michigan State is these past teams, of these glory years, always had a pass rush more than any. I mean, and everything on a defense, I think, stems from the complete and total lack of a defensive line. I mean, teams can double, triple team Malik McDowell every time out there, and the rest of the guys just aren't getting it done. I mean, either because they're, true freshmen, half of them it seems like are true freshmen in there, or other guys are just plain ineffective. And when a quarterback's able to sit back there and run the same play over and over without fearing any type of physical repercussion. I mean, McDowell got him once. I don't even know if McDowell got the sack. He got hit a couple times, but
I think it was McDowell because there was a missed block. He wasn't even touched, and he got in there. I think it was McDowell.
No, it all starts up there, but like you're saying, the linebackers are so injured that they don't have the muscle to make up for it in the running game. They're not getting out to the outsides to stop that Justin Jackson run. And then defensively, I think the defensive backs would be better if they had to cover for less time, but they're still not that good. The safeties can't cover. I mean, it's unbelievable to me just how many problems there are. Like every single position group. And you're seeing it in the depth chart this week. I mean, Deontay Copeland, who everybody's thinking, coming into this year, we're all like, oh man, we finally got him back. Wow, we really could have used him last year. And he's been fine, but he's not even he's a co-starter this week. He's a co-starter with Josh Butler.
He got benched because of Justin Jackson. Couldn't tackle Justin Jackson.
They're playing a 4-star receiver recruit who, yes, he played DB in high school, but they're starting him 7 games into the season at corner, like out of position. That's not good. And you count on your upperclassmen all across the football team. The upperclassmen are supposed to be the ones that lead not only on the field, off the field. They define the program. And the upperclassmen on this team, I mean, aside from a handful of guys, they're just not performing. I mean, between neither of the safeties are playing all that well. I think Riley Bullett's trying to power through some injuries. McDowell is doing everything he can, but go around the rest of that defense, and there's just guys just aren't carrying their weight. I didn't expect to ever see this on a D'Antonio team.
No, we knew the pass defense had taken a step back, and
yes.
When they lost what they lost, not only the starters of the defensive line, but they lost a lot of the backups with the transfers, like Craig Evans.
8 defensive linemen.
You knew it was going to be a struggle, but I think bigger problem than the scheme is a problem, but it's been a problem for a few years. bigger problem is the lack of development of the players.
Yeah.
Darian Hicks is, I think he's a senior, right? Like has he gotten any better?
I think he's gotten worse.
Nicholson's making the same mistakes.
Yep.
Poor tackling for him, poor angles to balls. Cox still can't cover one-on-one. Like none of these guys, and Nicholson and Cox were great athletes, and they just have not developed into football, into top level football players like they were supposed to. And when you're MSU and when you're not bringing in the 5-star recruits every year, and Nicholson and Cox were 4-star guys. Cox was both out of Pennsylvania. I think they might have both been the top players in Pennsylvania.
Top recruits in the state.
Yeah, and that's supposed to be MSU's bread and butter. That's D'Antonio's position. That's your defensive coordinator Harlan Barnett's position. And if you can't develop the players, then you're done, because that's what this relies on, because you're not just bringing in the straight up talent like you are at Ohio State and plug guys in. It's the guys who are the sophomores and juniors and the seniors have to be at their top level. And if you're not, it trickles down to everybody who's not ready for that spot. And it's the same thing you're getting at the quarterback position, that Tyler O'Connor was not ready for the job. And it comes down, that's on the coaches too.
That's coaching.
The scheme's that's on the player. It's player development. It comes down to the coaches. And
defensively, it speaks to, I mean, I think everybody was hoping that actually, really more than it just makes me appreciate Pat Narduzzi so much, because you've noticed the lack of development in the 2 years since he's been gone. I'm not saying that he is some second coming, but like, he is a hell of a coach. He always got the most out of his players. Like it's taken a noticeable step back since he left.
A funny thing about that though is actually at Pitt right now, their pass defense is brutal.
Really?
Yeah. But right, and
it's ironic.
Maybe the players develop better if Narduzzi is still around. But just the problems. D'Antonio said at his press conference that Josh King is like fixing his helmet in the middle of a play. Like what? Like that's on the coaches to make sure it doesn't happen. And Mark Snyder said on Northwestern's first touchdown, they had 10 guys on the field, and it sounds like it was a linebacker, and that's Snyder's position, and I believe he's on the field. I don't think he's in the press box. I think Trustin and Barnett are in the press box. So that's on the coaching, and just defensively, it's just I don't even know where to start, because
it starts with but
I'm saying defensive backs aren't doing well, defensive line's not doing well.
How do you fix it? I don't know.
Right. The only way you fix it is develop the players. The only way the offense got turned around in 2013 after 2012 was the players just got better and they made the plays. And so it's a complete mess defensively. They're, I think, I forgot what the third down. They are. They're 120. They are 123 nationally in third down defense. You know how we've been talking for weeks about you got to make the plays on third down?
Yeah.
There are like 5 teams in the country that are worse than them. Last year they were number 23. They've dropped 100 spots. 100. The third against FBS. Oh, this is against FBS teams too. The Furman game's not counted in this. So 51.2% of third downs are being converted.
Oh, my goodness.
And it's just like and against, I'll say at Northwestern, a lot of these were third and shorts because Northwestern kept picking up solid yards on first down with runs and with bubble screens. They were always in pretty favorable third down positions. And that's where it kind of starts. So defensively, there's not much to say other than the fact that you just gave up the most points ever in the history of home game to an offense that's not even really any good. And it's not getting any better this year. I mean, at this point, you're just looking toward next year. What are you going to do? You play the young guys, I guess, but you also you can't change your scheme in the middle of the year. So
no,
I don't know what types of changes they'll make after the year. This seems to have hit everybody. Even D'Antonio sounds a little shell-shocked, like he didn't see this coming.
Yeah, no, coming into the season, like you thought there's a lot of attrition, but at the same time, you have confidence in your program. You've run the same system forever. You've got guys that are upperclassmen kind of across a lot of the levels, that guys that have played. It's not like they, at the time coming into the year, were going to plan on running out all these true freshmen. You thought a handful of them would, chip in here and there, but it's just a systemic failure. And you can't run this stout, grinded out defense that depends on being so physical when you don't have the horses to do it. And now they're caught between a rock and a hard place where they have no choice but to play the freshmen, especially along the defensive line, because they literally don't have anybody else. And in the secondary, at this point, you're better off playing those young corners because, again, you probably don't really have anybody else. That has to be the way they improve. You're right. They just have to get more experience. And
at this point, all you can hope is that the young players get a lot better for 2017 because defense ain't getting any better here. So
no, not this year.
At this, I mean, really, if we're at this point, you're playing for next year because
yes,
I don't see them making a bowl. They have to, assuming you lose to Michigan, Ohio State, you got to win out, and I don't think they're going to do it. For one, Penn State looks like a very difficult game in its own, and also you can't beat Northwestern or Indiana,
or BYU.
So I think bowl's done at this point. You gotta mix. I mean, you don't want to. The problem is, it's hard if you're a coach. You don't want to signal that you've given up, but he also has to make the point that the seniors, the veterans, are just not good enough, and so it's time to give the young guys a chance because maybe they'll be better. And that's how you have to balance it instead of just we're not playing the young guys for the sake of playing the young guys. We're playing the young guys because we think they might be the best option we have right now.
Right, and he's starting to. I mean, it's been gradual.
Right.
The Justin Lane one is the. I mean, I know playing the freshman along the defensive line is a big deal, but to start Justin Lane at corner is a pretty clear signal, in my opinion. I mean, that's a kid who just started playing the position in college 3 weeks ago and has jumped a bunch of redshirt freshmen. I mean, like he jumped Josh Butler, he jumped David Dowell, he jumped a handful of other, they had that decent crop of redshirt freshman corners. I mean, Viante Copeland is not even, he's a co-starter. Justin Lane's the only pure starter, like unquestioned at corner. Yeah. And this week is a big one for that too, because if they lose again, which at this point, there's no reason to expect them to win, then you're 2-5. And then you don't have to, tiptoe around anything with your team. Like you don't want to look like you quit. You're only 6 games of the season. Completely understand that. D'Antonio is that kind of coach. You go to 2-5. It's like, come on, like
with Michigan
games to pull it together. Like
with Michigan next, and it's worth noting. Remember, he benched the safeties last year and started Kari Willis and Grayson Miller at Michigan, which I still can't believe.
I can't believe they won.
And
it doesn't make any sense.
and so I mean that's where it is at defensively. So same notion here. Take it to the offense. Lewerke starts. And it was a carbon copy of the BYU game. Start good off early, get a touchdown, and then everything just falls apart.
Really falls apart.
And offensive line blocked pretty well for him on those first few drives. And reporters at the game were saying Lewerke was missing some open guys downfield, and it's not unexpected, but he was getting the time, and I think that was a key. And they sped up the offense on that touchdown drive, and then they just stopped and everything fell apart. Then they get behind. O'Connor comes in. They open up the offense. They speed things up. O'Connor ends up finishing with decent numbers. And at this point, you can't not start O'Connor after how he finished that game. But where was that before? And if you don't run that same offensive style that you did at the end of the Northwestern game, you're just going to go in a circle here. You have to change it. And they just fall in this loop of slowing it down and one play at a time, and
methodical,
not throwing downfield. And I don't know if Lewerke didn't see deep ball. He hit one deep ball early, and there was a kind of a medium one later that RJ Shelton mistimed his jump. But then O'Connor comes in, and they immediately start throwing deep, and you're like, why did you not do this with the guy who has a much better arm?
Right. And it's on offense, it's easier for them to scheme switch on offense as opposed to defense. So go defensively. It's like you can't really change how you play at this point. Like this is who you are, especially just given the reputation of the program and the fact they've played that way for 10 years now. Like this is who you are. But offensively, they can change. They can change. You can do things differently. You're the one with the ball. You can dictate how the game is played. And I understand you can't completely revolutionize the way you play offense in a given week or even within a season, but like you can make changes simply based on tempo. You can make changes based on not lining up under center and running the ball on first down every single time. Like you can do things. You can run drag routes. You can run slants, quick passes.
I will say they've run more slants this year than they have I can recall in a long time, and that's them running like maybe 5 slants. They never ran those with
and that's a problem. That's a problem when you don't have a good enough offensive line to give you any type of running game, and you don't have a good enough offensive line to give you time to go deep very often unless you really deceive the defense. You have to move the ball somehow. You have to do quick screens. You have to do slants. You have to do drags. I mean, you don't see that. They run long developing routes. And to me, you hate to I feel bad pointing fingers, but like when things get this bad, you have to there is blame somewhere to be had. Not everybody's doing their job right now. This is
nobody's doing
no one's doing their job, but this is, to me, this is a team that can only succeed and that's in air quotes, it's a relative term, if they are put in all of the right positions. And right now, they are not being put in any of the right positions. And when they are, they're not executing, but it's much more the former than the latter. And to me, that it sounds like such a cop-out because it's a coordinator and you're like, oh, somebody's got to go or whatever. And you just don't want to be like the hot take or whatever. But time and time again, the offense has one good drive at the beginning of the game and then nothing. It's happened several times this year. And that falls on the offensive coordinator. That falls on Dave Warner. That falls on the play caller. And he has to change. Like, he has the ability to change. The guys on defense, it's like, you're dealt the hand, you're dealt. This is how we're going to play, and you got to get better. Offensively, you can do different things. And this team is so flawed offensively. It's clearly not just a quarterback thing. As much as I think we were all like, maybe if they change the quarterback, things will get better.
And I think you probably did too, but I said
I did.
It's not the quarterback. And I think Lewerke and O'Connor are kind of equal right now. I actually thought Lewerke looked pretty good, all things considered. He didn't force throws. He would rather scramble and try to do something and throw it away. He was protective of the ball, I thought, and
I thought he did.
And when he had the time, he was pretty good. He may have missed some guys, but that's gonna come with time.
Redshirt freshman.
He that first drive, those first 2 drives, he had confidence.
Yeah.
That third down deep ball, that was a confident throw, and he step back, lob it up. You like that was a confident play, and I thought he looked pretty good. I think there's a lot to work with there, but at the same time, I don't think you can not start O'Connor after how he finished the game, even if I think a large part of that was a byproduct of play calling and an incredibly lucky bounce on that first Shelton deep.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That was a lucky play. That was
unreal. They finally put in there. They finally they bring in the guy who all season has underthrown deep balls and then immediately go deep.
And you know what they did? It was a play action roll the quarterback out. Because you know what? The line, that's what, when the line can't protect, that's what you do. It was a good call. My question was, where was that before? Where was that with the guy who can make the throw?
Right. It was funny. I was sitting there. I went to the game, and I was 9 rows up on the goal line on the south end zone. And 2 quick things about that. First of all, that play, they line up in the I formation. I lean over to my buddy that I'm with. I'm like, they're going to run the ball. They're going to run the ball. It's first down. They're in the I formation. They're going to run the ball. I was just shocked. And then, of course, he bombs it down to Sheldon. And I wasn't even excited. I just sort of threw my hands and you're like, oh, whatever. And then after that, the other play that I'm just glad he got up with how hard Brian Lewerke got.
Oh, man. Oof.
Because I felt like I could have reached out and touched him. He got smoked. That's one of the hardest hits. And completely legal from the front side, like just got absolutely pancaked. And then after that, he got a little skittish. He started to run around more, which, I mean, hey, you can't blame him. Eventually, you got to fight for your own safety. But Yeah, I think moving forward, you're absolutely right about O'Connor. I don't see how you can't start him this week. But again, I couldn't agree with you more. I don't know that it matters between the two of them. I think eventually you have to put in Lewerke just because he's got to get reps.
He's got to get ready for next year.
He's got to get ready for next year. And, you know.
And you're not going to have the bowl practices to do it.
Right, yeah, which is a huge issue. But this week, I think you got to go with O'Connor. But it doesn't matter. I don't think it matters. Until the play calling and the scheme gets better. There's no difference.
They called, like, it was so weird. Like, they opened up the offense in the middle of the second half when they got down by so big. And it's like, that's what you have to do. Do you have any faith that they're going to run the offense like that to come out against Maryland?
Because there's no reason.
There's no reason to think they will.
There's no reason to have to everything is so broken that there's no reason in any of the three phases of the game to expect them to be overly successful. And that sounds so negative and so like inflammatory. But the last four games are the first time they've lost four games since like 1991 or something like that. And B, not only have they been bad, but they've been so bad. Each one of them, it's not even a consistent flaw. Like each game is something different, and it's not just bad, it's terribly bad, like horrendously bad. One game you just get absolutely manhandled by Wisconsin, then you choke a game away on the road against Indiana, then you get manhandled again by BYU, and in this last one you get spread out and picked apart by one of the worst offenses in the Big Ten. I mean, there is no consistent issue defensively or offensively that you can point to and say, if you can make this decent, not even good, decent, this team will significantly improve. I don't think there is. Because even if you make the pass rush better, you convince the corners can cover anybody, that the linebackers can stop the run. I mean, it's such a complete failure right now. It's such a dumpster fire.
And
it's unbelievable. It's crazy.
Something that we had a question about during the game that I guess got answered is, where was LJ Scott? 3 carries, 25 yards. He
2 straight games with 3 carries.
And I forgot, I don't know if it was D'Antonio or if it was assistant coach, said he's not pass blocking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big thing with how they do it. So I can understand it from that standpoint. You look at the rushes they had. I mean, Lewerke led the team with 7. LJ Scott had 3. Madre London had 3. I don't know why he's getting carries still.
Yeah, it's a great question.
If he can pass block, then have him in a pass block. But it's not worth passing to him. Gerald Holmes had 5 carries for 5 yards. Didn't have much of anything. I still think he's the best of the 3 right now.
Holmes.
Holmes.
Yeah.
So, but LJ Scott can make the big-ish play, right, but he apparently can't pass block. So that's what it is, a running back. I don't really know what you're supposed to do with that.
Well, you can't if you can't open up holes for him, it doesn't matter.
No, you can't. Right.
You play the best pass blocker, I guess, is probably the way.
You're gonna have to pass to set up the run. You can't run to set up the pass anymore. They pass the ball about twice as much as they ran it because they were down so much in this game. And that's how you have to do it. Like, you can't – we keep saying every week, you can't play this game trying to grind out a 17-16 affair because you don't have the defense for it. That's what we said last week, and that's what happened. That's what happened. Yeah. So that leads me into the Big Lead wrote a story titled, "There is no reason to respect Michigan State right now," written by Kyle Koster, who's an MSU alumnus. And he basically says – he compared them to Wile E. Coyote, where you never see the cliff coming at the end. And he says, and now they're dead. There's no sugarcoating it. It hasn't been death by 1,000 cuts. The carnage is grisly. There is no cause for optimism. And basically, the offense is anemic. There's nothing really to be positive about. Like in 2012, you could point to the defense as being one of the best in the country. Like, they can't do anything right now. Kyle Koster writes, right now Michigan State is baby so troubled that kind-hearted Michigan fans have done the unthinkable and showed pity. This is far worse than the disrespect the program used to fuel its rise. There should be no bristling at the warranted lack of respect. This is not a chip to place on the shoulder, but a bitter pill to be swallowed. And that's what I've kind of been saying on Twitter a bit. MSU fans listening to this game, Michigan is going to roll over this team next week on the 29th. It's going to be a mess. It's just going to be, don't expect it to be anything. I said on Twitter, Michigan might put up 70. We've seen some 70-pointers this year. Washington put up 70 on Oregon. Michigan put 78 on Rutgers. It's going to be a bloodbath in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I agree.
And just so, I mean, like, to the MSU fans, you're just going to have to sit there and
got to grit and bear it, man.
I haven't seen any trash talking on Twitter, even from Michigan fans, really. And like the story said, it's basically pity. And I'm not going to say this was coming. It's not like, Harbaugh's. This is the other thing. So it's going to be bad. But again, MSU's fall has nothing to do with Michigan's rise.
Right.
Steve Lorenz wrote a mailbag at MGoBlog and pointed out that other than Corley and McDowell, they've barely even had many head-to-head battles in recruiting. So it has nothing to do with that. This MSU sucks right now because the players aren't any good and the coaches aren't helping them.
Yeah, well, they're just fatally flawed on both of the lines. I mean, they lost so much talent along the lines, and the guys they brought in to replace them just have not been up to par. And that trickles to that impacts how your defense plays at every level, that impacts how your offense plays at every level. And that's just what it is. And when it comes down to this Michigan State game, I mean, they released the time for it and said it was going to be a noon game. And on Twitter that I was just wish they could play it at 3 a.m. so that I didn't have to actually watch it, because it's going to be a bloodbath. It's the combination of the fact that Michigan is actually a very good team.
Michigan. Here's the thing: MSU is 123rd in third down defense. Michigan's number 1 in third down offense. Like, awesome. But how many third downs are they even going to really get into?
Right. I mean, it's hard to. The thing that scares me the most is that defensive line is going to be coming after Tyler O'Connor, and he might make that Devin Gardner game where he took about 45 sacks look like kindergarten. I mean, it's hard to be remotely optimistic about it, not only because of the team that Michigan has and not only because of the team that Michigan State doesn't have, but also because of the absolute lack of remorse that is going to come from the coaching staff and the players alike.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think Harbaugh hates Michigan or hates MSU. It's not like one of those blood rival things, but he's just if he can put up 70 points, he's going to make a statement.
Way to put up 78 on Rutgers.
Well, sort of. They did just run the ball. It's not like they threw it all over the place. Although they did go for the 2 again for some reason, but he knew he could run the ball at will and did.
78 points is 78 points. It almost feels like you have to go out of your way to score that many. But I didn't watch it, but that's just what I assume. But and then pile on top of the fact that not only does Harbaugh not press the brakes ever for any reason.
No, he does not.
Also, it's a rivalry game. Also, we've owned them for the past almost decade. And then on top of that, the way that last year ended, they will not stop. I told somebody, I think I said it to one of my buddies, I'm like, we're going to lose this game by 50 points. I mean, there's no reason to expect unless
and Harbaugh's, I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you. Go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to say last year was a miracle.
Also, sorry if you hear a dog barking in the background.
It's not my dog. The way they won last year was a miracle that last play was incredible. They deserved to win that game if you look at the box score. But as incredible as that last play was, if they win this year, if Michigan State actually were to win this game, that is a bona fide miracle.
This will be the biggest upset in the history of the rivalry. It would be the biggest upset in the history of the rivalry. Michigan's going to be favored by 20-something points, and that's not going to be enough.
No, the line came out at 21 or something like that last week, or wasn't it? Or maybe I'm misinterpreting that. But
I don't. Yeah, something like
they're
that.
Going to be. I mean, they're going to kill us.
And
I don't even know if they're going to I'm sure they'll enjoy it and it'll be therapeutic. but like,
yeah, we don't need to go too deep. We don't need to go too deep into this. We'll talk about it next week. But Michigan's going to win big, and Harbaugh's not going to make some witty line in the press conference afterward like a D'Antonio type would. He's just going to be his normal self, and so that's where that is. There's the one thing I'll say, I guess, about the future is any reason for hope. It's not look to this. It's going to happen. It's you can hope for a fluke because every time D'Antonio's been down. And this is as far down as he's ever been. But both times he's been down, they've rebounded with the biggest of highs. They turned 2009 into a Big Ten title, the first Big Ten title the next year. They turned 2012 into the Rose Bowl championship. Yeah. So just as quickly as they've fallen, they have proven they can climb back up. I don't know what that's going to be. I don't know who that's going to be. I didn't think Connor Cook was going to take MSU to the Rose Bowl in 2013. So I can't say anything on that.
The only umbrage I took with that article is it had a feeling of like this is the end of the road.
That's
That is, so to say that is just, to me, it's completely ridiculous. Like I understand where they're at right now. They're rock bottom. You're the bottom of the Marianas Trench. It feels like you're as low as the program's ever been. But it boils down to recruiting misses and injuries that happened in the 2012 and 13 class. You still got a lot. The last three, everybody loves talking about recruiting and stars and all this stuff, and it's the backbone of any program. But the last three classes that Michigan State has had have all been in the top 22, I think, on Rivals. There is tons and tons of talent, and you're just starting to see it hit the field. And they are going to hit the field a lot for the rest of this season. The best way for players to get better is to actually play. And you're going to get it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be pretty at all for the rest of the year. But these are kids that are going to be cutting their teeth, getting ready for next year. And if you think D'Antonio is going to go through this offseason and not make it probably the most intense of his tenure, and then I think you're crazy. To say that this is the end is
No. D'Antonio has more than earned the benefit of the doubt that he can get it turned around. And absolutely. And you talk about the last year recruiting classes, and you look back to 2013, that one coming off of the 2012 season was only ranked number 35. And that was the year they only had one offensive lineman, which at the time we all kind of thought was, you sure only one offensive lineman, Dennis Finley, and then he breaks his leg last year, hasn't been able to come back. So you got a nothing from the offensive line out of that class, and you can't do that. Like I talked to Mike Leach the other day, and he says, they try to bring in 4, 5, 6 guys a year on the offensive line. Saban always builds from the inside out. Like that is the foundation of your team, and to only have done one offensive lineman, and even the defensive lineman from that class too. I think only one of them is still even on the roster as a defensive lineman.
They brought only between the 2012 and 2013 class. This is crazy to me when I was researching it this week. They only brought on 10 total linemen. 2 of them have been starters, in Conklin and Cody Keeler. Demetrius Cooper and Benny McGowan have played like fringe starter rules. Everybody else has basically not played.
No, and guys have transferred out. Guys have switched sides of the ball. Bodanis went and played in the Canadian Football League.
Yeah,
I think.
But they lost.
Devin Salmon switched sides.
They lost. David Fennell, who I think ended up at fullback, but he had to retire. One of the other, Zach Higgins, had to retire due to injury.
They've just now recruited offensive line. They've never recruited offensive line well. Before that, even when they got guys, they would suffer. 3 years ago, we had the angry MSU offensive lineman hating guys because everybody got in. David Barron, all these guys had career-ending injuries, and Arthur Ray got cancer. And just they couldn't get any good luck there. But they have not recruited offensive line well.
The last couple of years, they've done a much better job.
It came together. Nobody saw Jack Conklin becoming.
No.
Even when I'm in doubt, you get credit for finding him, but to be that good, no one saw that coming. Jack Allen, you knew he was going to be good. Donovan Clark ended up developing into a pretty decent guy. But I talked to someone who used to be in the program, and they don't like how MSU rotates so many guys on the line.
That's a lot.
That's something Mark Staten's always done, and sometimes it pays off. If you have injuries like last year, it can pay off to get more guys experience. But in general, you'd think you'd want to get a 5 to get them chemistry. That's so important, the offensive line, to develop chemistry as a unit. And they have none because guys are switching positions based on the drive.
Yeah, it's too much. They're trying to do too much. It feels like
I think you have to just pick your guys and go with them. Let them have some growing pains. Maybe move a guy if he's really bad. But I don't think right now with all the problems you have, you got to just find your guys and your top 5 and roll with them.
To touch on that recruiting again real quick, like you said, that 2013 one was the 35th overall class.
Yes.
Now, and they talked about it at the time, and it's been very obvious for the last 3 classes. You're talking about riding that Rose Bowl wave and that Cotton Bowl wave and that college football championship wave of recruiting. Those are the kids that are just starting to hit the field. That recruiting is just going to start paying off here pretty soon.
It's going to have to.
Well, yeah. I mean, if it doesn't, then you're in the.
And it'll be interesting to see what this year does to this upcoming recruiting class too. So,
well, here's my pitch to any recruits that are listening is that there's a lot of playing time to be had.
I imagine that how he's selling it, saying we'll play. You know, you have a full opportunity to play, and he's made that clear with everybody this year. So we've talked about the state of the program. They still have a game to play on Saturday, believe it or not. The season still continues. They traveled to Maryland. Maryland, you may remember as the team that basically chopped off MSU's arm last year by injuring Connor Cook, and he was never the same. Maryland, this will be a night game, 7:30 on BTN. Maryland comes into this game 4-2, led by DJ Durkin, the former Michigan defensive coordinator. And they started off 4-0, but didn't really beat anybody of note. Then they go to Penn State and get whooped. Then they play Minnesota last year with their backup QB at home and lose handily 31-10. Perry Hills is supposed to be back at quarterback. He's no longer throwing 5 interceptions a game. So we've kind of seen different kinds of Maryland teams here, but what do you see when you see Maryland?
I see a pretty basic team. They have only they don't throw the ball a whole lot. They've run the ball 259 times this year, thrown only 143. They've got 7 different guys with at least one rushing touchdown. It's a balanced running attack, which is not entirely different than what they learned before. Perry Hills is not, a prolific passer, only 6 touchdowns, 2 picks, and he's just coming back this week. Most years you would think this is a slam dunk. If Michigan State could stop run it all, I would feel the same way this year. But going on the road, under the lights, to a team with a newfound energy, with a new head coach who probably doesn't like Michigan State after the way last year ended, when he was the Michigan defensive coordinator, they're going to be motivated. They're going to be fired up. It's going to be very similar to when Michigan State played Indiana in terms of atmosphere and the energy they get from the other team, even though Indiana wasn't all that good until the end of that game. Right now, there's not a lot of reason to have a confidence that they can pull this one out. I mean, even though Maryland's given up 30 some odd points to Minnesota and Penn State, I guess the game plan is just to come out and try to do what you did in the second half last week again and just run and gun. But who knows?
Yeah, Maryland looks like a team that's going to run the ball more than anything. So we'll see where that run defense is and if they can tackle this time around. And other than that, I don't know what to expect from the MSU offense. I don't know if they're going to actually speed it up and try to make some of it, or if they're going to fall back into their basic stuff, because there was something you could work with last week. And,
something to build on for the first time all season.
Right, and I don't know if they're going to or not. I'm guessing O'Connor will start. If it's not O'Connor, then I think they'll really be kind of taking this rebuild a little more seriously.
Yeah, I think if they go with Lewerke this week, that's a pretty clear signal after the way O'Connor played in the second half and the numbers he was able to put up and how much more comfortable he looked. I would fully expect it to be O'Connor. D'Antonio won't name a starter yet, but he has said Lewerke will play one way or the other, which is good. But yeah, who knows, man? I mean, it's hard to say much of anything.
MSU's favored in this game, I think, again.
Which is
by like 2 or 3 points, and I'm just like, they've been favored in all 4 of these losses, so I don't want to hear about MSU getting disrespected because they're still getting respect.
No, there's no
favored on the road.
This year, that article that you referenced earlier has it right. They don't deserve respect this year.
No,
but that's different than saying the program doesn't deserve any respect because that's crazy. But like this year in this game, why, if you've watched Michigan State play, I haven't watched a minute of Maryland yet, but why would you expect them to not only win, but to go on the road and under the lights and an opponent's, this is a big game for them. This is a big game for Maryland. This is Michigan State football coming in, and despite the record, they're going to take it seriously. And you haven't seen it on the field. I have no idea what to expect. I said in my prediction column, or in my prediction at the end of last week, that if they lost to Northwestern, I would not pick them for the rest of the season. So you'll be getting L's from me from here on out. And I also realized that my 16-14 prediction of a Michigan State win last week might historically and statistically be the worst of all time.
Yeah, I ain't picking them to win either. Again, I think I might have picked them by 1 point last week. I think I did.
Because
I did because it was at home. So this one road, not seeing it. Do you want to go with the score yet?
Yeah, sure. I can come up with something. I will say, let's see here. They scored 14 on Penn State, 10 on Minnesota. I'm going to say 28-17.
Oh, he's so close. I was going to say 27-17. So I'll change. I'll go let me make it different. So I'll go 35-21.
Man.
If you would have told me, that's a pretty big score, but you just gave up 54 points to Northwestern.
Yeah, if you would have told me at the beginning of this year that we'd be sitting here week 7 picking Michigan State to lose by 2 scores to Maryland confidently, I would have called you crazy.
Yeah.
I can't. It's pretty incredible. I would love to see them go out and get this win and at least not have the bowl hopes die on the vine this week.
Well, I mean, technically they would. Well,
they could still get in at 5-7, couldn't they?
Well, I guess that's possible. Nebraska did. I mean, you absolutely take it.
1,000%.
I mean, I remember when Notre Dame was turning down like 6-6 bowl games, and I was just like, why? Like, are you that prideful? Like
Notre Dame? Yeah, they are.
I was surprised. But so, okay, yeah, we did the scores. One last thing, interesting. I saw today. NFL.com talked to some anonymous scouts.
Yeah.
On the topic of Malik McDowell, said, he looks good, but this anonymous scout questions his football character in the sense that he taps out, like he taps his head to come out too often. The story noted that he's playing the same amount of snaps as he did last year at 66%, but I can't speak to if he's fatigued or not or what his conditioning is. But something that I noticed during the Northwestern game is this dude is banged up. There were one time I think they had to call timeout, but twice game had to stop for him to come out. Every week it seems like 1 or 2 times he goes down with something. And so he looks to be pretty banged up right now. I can't speak to his football character, but I just thought that was an interesting comment. What do you think of McDowell this year? I mean, there's been some plays where you're just like, you can see just how good this dude is, and he has very little around him.
You see, well, I think the difference from last year to this year is pretty obvious. I mean, he doesn't have Shilly Calhoun, Lawrence Thomas, Joel Heath, these dudes taking pressure off of him, being double and triple teamed on every single play. So to say that he's getting worn out, but he's playing the exact same is just not, you're just not doing your homework. I mean, he's getting double and triple teamed, like I said, every single play, as opposed to last year when he got a decent amount of single blocking because teams would double Shilly Calhoun more often.
Mm-hmm. And he's still made some plays, and he's gotten through some of those double teams. And you see some of these plays.
I mean, you watch him get into. He had a couple last week, even when he just busts into the backfield. He manhandles some people, and you see the flashes of why, if he chooses to leave, which I assume he will.
Yeah, I have to. I assume 99.99999%. I just because I'm not going to say.
I'm pinning my hopes to the fact that he doesn't want to go out like a 5-7.
I'm never gonna. Would never try to sway a kid away.
No, absolutely not.
It's the same as money for his family.
Same as Deontay Davis. Go make your money. NFL careers are short as they are, and he'll be a top 15 pick. It's just me in my fandom is like, come on. But
and it kind of makes me think of 2012. They lost Le'Veon Bell off that terrible offense, and they lost William Golston left early. Was that the year?
Did Worthy leave that year too?
No, Worthy left after 2010.
Oh yeah, he left after that Georgia game.
Yeah, I don't know if Golston was there in 20.
I think Golston was there on that. No, because Golston came back
look this up.
to fight. He pulled somebody's face mask on Michigan, twisted Denard's face mask.
That was in the 2011 game.
Oh, that was 2011.
Yeah, okay. Golston was on the 2012 team. Yeah. So they lost Golston and Bell off of that team and ended up getting a lot better. So when you say look how bad this defense is and they're losing Malik McDowell, there is a little bit of precedent in that this has happened before and they've turned things around. The 2008 offense was a mess and they lost Hoyer, Markdell, and Javon Ringer, and the offense got a lot better in 2009 with a bunch of So it's possible.
It's very possible. There's so many freshmen.
We're not writing off the future of the program. Someone asked me after the game, how far back does this season set MSU? And I said it sets them back 1 year. Just 1 year. I'm not going to say this sets them back for years. Because we've seen it. We've seen D'Antonio make the quick turnaround. So it's not like we've never seen it. Their fans are wanting something that they've never done before to happen. We've seen it happen. So that's why D'Antonio
he's never strung together back-to-back bad years. Like you said, the two times they've won 6 games in a season, they bounced back for the Big Ten championship and the Rose Bowl. To expect, I'm not going out. I'm not saying that next year they're going to do that, but to think that nope, that's it. One bad season. Forget all the good recruiting that's coming up. Forget all of the success they've had. Michigan State's done. No, that's just dumb. That's just late.
We've written off 2016. We're not writing off.
Oh yeah, this year's.
We're not writing off 2017.
Nope. Get excited, people. 2017.
That's what it is. And 2017 football and a basketball season that's going to have probably terrible start to it. But but that's what you get for what you got in 2015. So
at least we have the Lions.
Appreciate this should make you appreciate the wins. I felt like last year in previous years, MSU fans, maybe not MSU fans, but people didn't maybe take MSU, or maybe took them a little bit for granted. D'Antonio even said maybe they've taken the bowl streak for granted in that just how many big wins and big seasons they had. And if you were one of those MSU fans who didn't take it for what it's worth and instead got bogged down in arguing with Michigan fans on Twitter about who's going to be back and window closing and all that crap, I was said back then, just focus on what you got and enjoy what you got, because you never know when something's going to happen. So, and MSU fans have mostly not taken this well because it's been a long time since the John L. days since.
Yeah, there was a feeling
seen something like this.
One last point, but the feeling in the stadium I've been going to Michigan State games my entire life, so I've been through almost 30 years of games, and the feeling in the stadium on Saturday was different than anything else I've experienced. My time at Michigan State was the beginning of the D'Antonio era. Some devastating losses, like the loss to Iowa on the Marvin McNutt play. I've been there when they've gotten their ass handed to them by Michigan, and Chris Perry ran the ball 57 times. And every season has a different feel. In the past, it was, when you'd win, it's like, oh my gosh, we're winning games. And then with the expectation, even the down years recently have been damn, we'll go get them next season. And then because the team got so good and reached such a high precipice, almost as high as you can get, this year it's just different. It's like a sense of Michigan State fans feel entitled with I think some good reason. And this was just like such a blindsidingly bad season that it's a different feeling. And I hope MSU fans and alums and students can just like take the L this year and don't let this ruin everything going forward. Don't sell.
Yeah. You gotta swallow the pill, and it's gonna be bad. And
you take it, and
it's what it's gonna be. So just get prepared for it. So we've been negative Nancy's for a good hour here. So we'll wrap it up on that. Maybe there'll be something positive to talk about next week. But So until then, anything else you want to add?
Follow me on Twitter, ACSmith06.
Yeah, and Austin wrote a good piece on what happened to MSU's lines on the onlycolors.com website. So check that out, and he'll have the preview and everything up too. So check that out as well.
Sure.
So, all right. Well, for Austin, this is Chris. Thanks, guys, for listening, and we will talk to you next week. See you.
Go Green.